Hi and welcome to today's video. Today we'll be making a Celine Inspired jacket for spring. Now I saw this photo on Pinterest a couple of months back and ever since I've been really wanting to make one for myself. So today that's what we're gonna do. I think I want kind of this jacket but with this kind of fit because my waist is really high up and my hips are quite wide. So when short jackets are too long on me, it just looks a bit awkward. So I know I want kind of the original, but slightly longer. But first of all, I'm gonna head over to my local fabric store, Self-Made, and pick up some fabric, so I will see you guys afterwards. I have never spent that long in there. I was there for 2 hours just trying to decide what fabric I wanted because they have really cold lighting in there and I'm a redhead. So sometimes the colors just look really off on me when I'm there and then I get home and they look good after all. But that's not really easy to know in the store when a lot of the colors just make me look very pale and kind of sick because there's just such cold lighting in there. So yeah, I spent a long ass time trying to just find fabric that had the same quality I want and also had a color that didn't make me look like I had to barf. But I ended up with this woolen fabric right here that I think would be just perfect, and it's also two-colored, so I will have to decide what color I want first. I also got these beautiful golden buttons in 3 different sizes for the front of the jacket, the pockets and the sleeves, and I'm kind of just laying them on top of the fabric to try to decide what color I want. I've decided to use the beige side because it is closer to the original. I just felt like it looked very green on me in the store, but once I got home it is definitely looking beige, so I think that will be a smart choice. Because the brown just feels very fall to me and that's just not what I want right now. So yeah, I think this will be good. For the jacket, I will be making the pattern myself, and for that I'll be using this thin transparent fabric I have to make the pattern onto firstly, so that I can easily transfer it onto the fabric I will actually be using. And I'm using this jacket that I already have and really love the fit of, and it has kind of a similar shape, so I'll be using this to make the pattern, and then I'll kind of just be adjusting the parts that I want to look kind of different, because for an example, I think the sleeves of this one are kind of slimmer than I want, and also I want the jacket I will be making to be a little bit shorter and also a bit wider here. So those are just some of the adjustments that I will be making, but I think it's always very nice to sort of have some guidelines to work off of. Once the pattern was done, I started cutting the fabric, but I was a little eager to get started, so I just completely forgot to film the beginning, which was of me cutting out the main pieces for the front and the back of the jacket. And as you can see, I have already moved on to the sleeves. But anyways, the sleeves consist of 2 parts each, so here I've cut up the first part for both sleeves, and I am now moving on to cutting out the second part and making sure that I'm cutting it out with the right sides facing each other. But here you can see the rest of the pieces for the outer parts of the jacket, so these are the main parts and the color. I've been kind of unsure what kind of lining I want in the jacket, but I think I've decided on just this white satin on the inside because I think that's just going to look really pretty, and also it's a light color, so I know that it won't show through the woolen fabric. So yeah, I think that's going to be a smart choice. Now, when it comes to sewing, I am actually starting out with the sleeves, and they only consist of 2 parts each, so I've just sewn those 2 pieces together in the middle, but leaving an opening of about 15 centimeters in the bottom for the buttons. Also, I'm adding in the lining now, and that is because I want to completely finish the sleeve before sewing it into the rest of the jacket. So I made a slit in the lining fabric in the same spot as the wool, and I then sewed the wool and lining together in that slit, and I'm going to add the buttons into that opening. The only reason I'm doing this is honestly just for the aesthetic and the details, and also I hate when I buy clothes that have like fake pockets or fake openings, and I want this jacket to feel luxurious. But anyways, I started out by placing down the buttons to see where I wanted them, and then marked out the buttonholes with a ruler and a pencil, and I'm now just started sewing those in and making a slit in each hole for the button to go through. The only thing that I'm not doing on the sleeves now is finishing the bottom of them, because I want to wait with that until they're attached to the jacket so that I don't accidentally make them too short or anything. But I gotta say, I do think it's starting to look pretty nice. By the way, I am sewing the sleeves and sort of the main part of the jacket individually, because if you do that, you can, in the end, sew them together firstly above the shoulder, and then you can have one long seam from the wrist and all the way down to the waist. And I think that's just the easiest way to make sleeves, because you always get a perfect finish, and it's way easier to sort of align the seams that will meet up under the shoulder this way. So if you're ever gonna make sleeves, do that. For now, I am therefore putting the sleeves aside and moving on to sewing the main parts of the jacket. Now, I have already sewn together the front and the back of the jacket in the shoulders here, so now it's at least possible to try it on, and you can also kind of start to see it all taking shape. And I've also sewn together the back of the jacket here, and this seam is going to align with the seam on the sleeves. Also, I have finished making the collar off camera because apparently it had just stopped filming and I didn't notice, but since that is done, I can now attach it to the body of the jacket. And for that, I have marked out the middle point on both the collar and the middle on the back here. So I am going to align those 2 points and pin those together first, and then pin the rest of the sides to ensure it's all aligned. By the way, I'm only sewing on one side of the collar to the outside of the jacket, and the other side is going to be sewn together with the lining instead. I'm now done with the main part of the jacket and the collar, and I'm also almost done with the sleeves, but here you can at least see the jacket. I am definitely loving the way it's turning out. I have not sewn on the sleeves yet. That is going to be the next thing on the list, but I have started to sew in some of the lining though, because I kind of needed that to be able to finish at the front of the jacket. And I also ironed it down, so now it just looks so sleek and perfect. And honestly, I'm just loving how this is turning out so far, so I can't wait to attach the sleeves and then get started on the lining. So this is the first sleeve. I finished up the seam on the middle here, down up until the buttons. And I also hand sewed the buttons in, and I feel like it looks so professional. So I'm just gonna sew this together with the rest now, starting out with the shoulder seam. Okay, so now I have started to attach the lining on the sleeve here, so I am kind of like sewing the parts of the sleeve separately, and then I will sew them together in the sides afterwards. So I'm now sewed this shoulder on the inside, and now I'm going to sew this part too. I'm gonna be honest, making lining is just a hot mess. It often just looks like a big ball of fabric onto the table until you're done, and it's kind of nitpicky to work with because there's so much fabric going on at once. But basically, making lining is just using the same pattern pieces that you have for the outside and copying them onto the lining fabric to use on the inside, and then in the end you just sew everything together. I don't know if you can tell, but this is getting very hard to work on. Also, it's getting kind of complicated, but I'm gonna try to explain what we're doing. So right now I kind of have these two sleeves, one of the wool and one of the lining within each other, but I have not sewn them in the sides, and that is the next thing I'm gonna have to do. Now for that, I'm gonna have to turn it inside out again, and I'm starting out with the outer sleeve first and just pinning it down all the way, because I have already sewn the outer fabric and the lining together at the bottom, as well as a seam on the last 10 centimeters, as you can see on the other one here. So I basically just have to sew a seam in the side that goes all the way down to that. I did the same with the lining fabric, so now it's time to turn it all inside out or onto the correct side. So we can finally see how it's turning out, and I gotta say it's looking pretty good so far. Especially on the inside of the jacket here, I feel like it's just looking very luxurious with the white satin. Before I finish up sewing the bottom seam of the lining and kind of closing all of the seams on the inside of the jacket, I will be sewing on the buttons for the front first, because then they will only be attached sort of in between the outer fabric and the lining, so you won't be able to see any of the stitching on them, and I just think that looks really pretty on the inside. So I will be attaching them first just with safety pins to kind of see where they will be placed. And here you can see that I have placed them onto the jacket, and I'm kind of just trying to use extra safety pins to see where the jacket will close. So I also know exactly where the buttonholes need to be. So I will be attaching those first, and then I will be moving on to the pockets afterwards. I'm kind of just making a grid onto the front of the jacket for the placement of the buttons, and I am definitely using a ruler and just a normal pencil to mark everything out, so I know that they will be symmetrical and completely lined up. And I'm doing this before the pockets, because only then the jacket is going to kind of fall into place and I will be able to get the pockets completely aligned with each other. So yeah, that is why I'm waiting with those until I'm completely done with the front of the jacket. And the pockets that I'm making are called welt pockets. I don't really know how to explain them, but it's kind of when you have these like flap pockets and everything is sort of sewn on the inside. I think that's just the prettiest type of pocket. And also there are lots of photos on Pinterest that kind of explain how to make welt pockets really easily. So if you try to make these yourself and don't know how to make the pockets, definitely recommend going on Pinterest and searching them up and just following every tutorial there is on there. So I've started out by making a slit on each side of the jacket that are about the width of my phone, and I've already made the flaps here and the slit, so I'm just placing them down onto that. This is kind of what it's gonna look like once they're done. I just sewed those in, which means it's time to add the actual pocket that I made of the lining fabric. Now, the jacket is going to be kind of short, so I don't really have space for them to be very big, but I measured them out just a little bit bigger than my phone, so I'm just gonna pin those down. They are now done, and this is what they're looking like. I do need to iron them down to make them look perfect, but I still think they look pretty good if you ask me. But anyways, right before I closed the bottom seam, I remembered that I had completely forgotten to put anything into the back of the jacket to be able to hang it up. So thankfully, I mastered to do that before I finished up, so you can see how that turned out. But I am now done with the jacket, and I absolutely love how it turned out with kind of the white satin lining on the inside. And here you can see just what it looks like in the back. So I truly mastered to align all of the seams here, and I think that just turned out so perfectly, and I'm really happy about it. Also, I really love how the sleeves on it turned out. Also, I did decide to sew the buttons on the pockets just onto the flap on the outside and not make a buttonhole all the way through, because I figured out I kind of want the ability to just get quickly into my pocket and get my keys out and stuff like that, but I still really wanted the buttons, so I just placed them onto the outside like this, and I think that turned out really well.
There's no time to be prude. I let you kidnap my tongue and I let you measure my waist, and intense fire will take us higher than higher. Ooh, cuddle me blue. Take me to the edges of you. Ooh, ooh.
So that's it for today's video. I really love doing this project and I absolutely love how the jacket turned out, and I hope you like it too. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and check out my other videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye!